Welcome to Cyber Certified. Today we're doing a deep dive into, well, let's call the alphabet soup of security and business agreements. We're talking SLA, NDA, MOU, MOA, BPA, SOW. And the idea isn't just definitions, right? We want to get our heads around the real differences, maybe some negotiation pitfalls, and how these documents really underpin third-party risk management.
Exactly. Look, for this audience, knowing the acronym isn't enough. We need to focus on what's enforceable, who's liable, how it links to compliance. Understanding the legal weight, or sometimes lack of it, that's what stops the big headaches later. Security, operations, legal. It touches all of them.
Okay, good point. Let's unpack that. Where should we start? Maybe the service level agreement? The SLA, most folks think, 99.99% uptime. But what are we really measuring there, especially from a security or compliance angle?
Well, uptime is definitely part of it, a big part. But it's about measuring performance metrics that directly tie to reliability. Think mean time to repair, MTR, or recovery time objectives, RTO. Those are often baked in. For a security team, the SLA isn't just about getting service credits if something goes down. It often dictates how fast that vendor has to tell you about an incident, how quickly they need to restore service. And that feeds directly into requirements for things like, say, SOC2 reporting.
Okay. So it's less about just billing adjustments and more about mandated reliability, especially when things go wrong. All right, shifting gears a bit from performance to secrecy. The non-disclosure agreement, the NDA, beyond just keep this quiet, what should cyber pros really be looking for in the details, in these specific clauses?
Yeah, there's definitely more depth there. First, is it unilateral, just one party disclosing, or mutual? If you're like a security firm sharing your methods, you probably want it to be mutual to protect your own stuff.
Right, protect your own IP.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
Exactly. Then you've got the survival clause. How long does that confidentiality actually last after the main contract ends? Sometimes it's forever, sometimes just a few years. And maybe look for injunctive relief. That basically means you can go to court quickly to stop someone from leaking info, not just sue for damages later.
Okay, injunctive relief, survival clause, mutual versus unilateral. Got it. Now, here's where I think things often get fuzzy. That distinction between intent and real obligation, which brings us to the MOU versus the MOA. Is this kind of like progressive steps in formalizing things?
That's a great way to put it. The Memorandum of Understanding, the MOU, is generally non-binding. It's about intent. Think of it as a formal handshake. It outlines general goals, maybe initial roles. Like you might see two agencies agree in principle they'll share threat intel down the road. But the key phrase is usually no legal obligation. It's a framework, a starting point.
Okay, so the MOU is the handshake, the soft agreement, then the Memorandum of Agreement, the MOA. That must be where the legal teeth come in, where the risk really lies.
Absolutely. The MOA is the binding commitment. It's formal, it's legally enforceable. This document lays out specific responsibilities, resource commitments, how liabilities are split. It's much more detailed. So that example of a university and a research lab, if they formally agreed to share computing power and sensitive data, the MOA needs to spell out exactly who's responsible if there's a security breach or data loss. Without that, you're really exposed.
Right, clarity on liability is crucial there. Okay, let's move to the actual work being done, the statement of work, the SOW. Why is this so critical? Is it just about preventing scope creep, or is there more to it in, say, a security assessment context?
It's definitely key for preventing scope creep, but maybe even more importantly, it's about defining authorized activity. It specifies exactly what work, what deliverables, the timelines, acceptance criteria, standard stuff. But for security, the exclusion section is often vital. If you hire a pen testing firm, the SOW needs to list the exact systems, the IP ranges they're allowed to test. And just as critical, it should explicitly rule out things you don't want them doing, like maybe aggressive DOS testing or certain kinds of social engineering, unless that's specifically agreed upon.
So it defines the sandbox they play in. If it's not in scope or explicitly out of scope, doing it creates a problem.
Precisely. It protects both sides, really. Prevents misunderstandings and potential damage or liability.
Makes sense. Okay, one last one. The Business Partners Agreement, the BPA. How does this fit in, especially around security in a joint venture?
So the BPA is specifically for governing joint ventures or partnerships between businesses. It defines how you'll share profits, sure, but also liabilities, and really importantly, how you handle intellectual property created together. Imagine two cybersecurity firms collaborating to build a new security tool. The BPA needs to clearly state who owns the resulting IP and, crucially, who is responsible for securing the shared development environment or the infrastructure used to deliver the final product. If there's a breach within that joint project, a vague BPA could mean messy legal fights and potentially unlimited liability for both partners.
Wow, yeah, that sounds like something you'd want nailed down tight from the start.
Definitely. So if we kind of zoom out and connect all these, understanding the legal weight or the lack thereof is just fundamental. Knowing if you're signing something informal like an MOU or something strictly binding like an MOA or a detailed SOW, that understanding has to come before you commit resources or share sensitive data. It shapes your actual risk exposure.
That's a great summary. So here's a final thought for you, our listeners, to mull over. How does the defined enforceability, the kind you get from a really tight MOA, or those specific SOW exclusions we talked about, how does that change your actual calculated risk assessment compared to just starting with the handshake, the non-binding intent of an MOU? Something to think about. Thank you for listening. If you like this video, please feel free to leave a like and subscribe.